Anne was staying at an empty substation. The grey concrete platform was melting with the overcast sky. The 65-year-old woman just used, as they say in the sand-up-the-river places. The 10-year sentence is a hard trial even for an old dodger, but Anne, after a long time, started to treat the life more philosophically. Anyway, she could not ignore some radical changes in her village. Everything was so unhabitual that Anne was not able to recognize the place she spent her life in. It seemed that all the coziness was swept away, which made the village so impersonal and sterile. There was a two-floor supermarket instead of a small local convenience store. It was indeed convenient, and the assortment was bigger, but the lines were the same and it was hard for Anne to get used to newfangled self-service tills. The supermarket didn't come alone to the village. Now the countryside was adjacent to a multi-lane humming highway. Passing by cars illuminated not only the sky but also the nearby houses. Locals grumbled and held special meetings, but it was absolutely unclear what were they to do with the already built road. The famous birch forest, which was cut down for a big construction project, came out to be the main tragedy for her. However, under economic circumstances, the construction site was stopped at the foundation stage, and there was nothing left on the field except for a concrete platform and dead, chopped-down trees. Anne's piece of land didn't also get any better during her absence. Right after the gate, a man told greenery was awaiting for her. She waded through the wild bushes of her garden and faced the burst-out door. The doorway was filled with musty blackness. Since there was no door, the house must have been wrecked. The inside was even worse. The roof had a leak, and there were mold patterns flourishing instead of wallpapers. The plaster fell off the ceiling, and in some places there were some rags and cloth piled. "Must be homeless people," gasped she, and flipped a dirty syringe with her foot. Of course, local burglars stole all the appliances, some windows were broken, and woman's favorite couch was destroyed in tatters. Most of all she was upset about was some unwanted who destroyed her family cupboard. It was an eye-watering view, but the woman told herself not to cry. Tears of sorrow will not help. She went to sleep on a broken bed upstairs, very tired and anxious-hearted. In the very morning, the woman looked at this from a completely different side, not as a problem, but as an obstacle that needs to be overcome. She was more worried about the house. It seemed almost impossible to put in order such a ruin. However, Anne only silently gathered her hair and took an old broom with her hard hands. The whole day straight she cleaned out a pile of rubbish and dragged the several bags of rubbish into the trash. The building was empty, but more or less clean. After the house, the homemaker immediately got down to her garden. The bushes were first to go, under her passionate efforts. And then first signs of patches appeared in front of the house. On the whole, she was fighting for her happiness, not being afraid of work and difficulties. Her neighbor, Igor, was watching it with discontent from his cottage. He didn't expect her to be back alive and well, and moreover, he didn't expect her to have an intention to restore the ruined house. "The old hag seems to boil my blood on purpose," thought Igor, clenching his teeth. He had already planned to take her piece of land for himself to build a guest house there and an indoor pool. One day, Anne got distracted by a creaky voice while planting jasmine. "Back already, neighbor? Been on vacation or traveled?" Igor began to beg the woman, rubbing a cigarette in his hands. She looked at him head to toe, Anne hated her neighbor deeply since it was his pleasure she was put in jail at. It is worth of mentioning his fortune Igor inherited from his mother. The piece of land, the house, the auto park which once belonged to his father, the bank account were passed down to him under the will. Since the childhood he wanted money, but his mother never gave him large allowances. She understood that he wanted to throw money about and live a careless life, not to work and not to be concerned about consequences. However, she couldn't even guess how much he craved money and how he was obsessed with inheritance. It turned out afterward that he was completely spoiled and determined to do whatever it takes for wealth. The most terrifying happened after his conflict with mother. She wouldn't give him money for a 3-week vacation in Greece. The screams and shouting could be heard even from Anne's house. The woman would never forget how she came to cheer up the elderly neighbor. They were having tea. Anne was saying that everything will settle down and work out, when suddenly she dropped the cup and fell on the floor. Anne went catatonic and didn't understand what was going on. Igor told the authorities that Anne regularly came over for tea and always wanted to get her grubby paws on their house. Later, the poison material, identical to one found in deceased blood, was found in her house. Why so silent, neighbor? Cat got your tongue? Do not make me feel guilty with your gaze. It is you who gets convinced. He kept moving his moustache and being nasty. I'm also glad to see you, neighbor, said Anne discreet while weeding the garden. I see you tidying up your dump and got into gardening. Good for you. It will be so frustrating to have the renovated house burn down, won't it? God forbid you accidentally burn in there too. It is not the best case scenario, you got to admit. He leaned on the fence in a power pose. The woman stopped and squeezed the rake with her hand. There was no doubt the man was threatening her. Smug bastard, thought she. Has he really gotten that impertinent and fearless? And was not afraid, no, she just didn't know yet how to deal with it. All the priorities flipped upside down in her head. The house, land, new life, all that took a back seat. You are silent for no purpose, Anne. If we talked, perhaps we would come to some decent solution. What if I told you that I was ready to get you rid of the problems with this land for like Igor twirled his moustache, I would say 1,000. You will know you are safe for sure if you sell this house. You can go for the hills. Moreover, you won't be an eyesore for me. Anne kept silent. Apparently, her estate cost much more than his bid. Extortion and intimidation are classic bandit tricks. She turned around pointedly. Get out. Igor threw a fit and kicked the fence. You'd better set up the fire alarm. That evening, Anne spent thinking everything over. She could not deal with him forcibly. Moreover, villagers looked at the ex-con with a jaundiced eye. There was nothing to get him with, but for a stratagem. At dawn, she blew off the candle and went to sleep. She seemed to have a good idea. Several more weeks passed. All this time Anne was getting herself together to start fulfilling her plan. Finally, she came up to neighbor's gate, pressed the bell. It took him a while to open the door, but the expression of his face showed frankly surprise. What do you want? Took back the man. I was thinking, neighbor, I'd better not get in grips with you, am I right? I can tell you are a good man and wish only good to me, but I am for no reason being stubborn. So here I am, come to discuss the sale of the land. I have finally made up my mind. It will be a right decision, I suppose. Perhaps we could even bargain the price, along with drinking to that. said the woman and took a bottle out the bag. Igor immediately gassed up and smugly rubbed his hands. The woman got impressed how pompous the house was outside and how littered it was inside. They sat down at the table and started to celebrate the deal, while the man was having shot after shot, and with stealth was pouring it out in the pot with dried ficus. The more wasted Igor got, the more impertinent he became, and did not filter anything. "That was very good of you to come by, and I see you don't want to get back to jail, otherwise I would squash you like a bug, swear to God." Just like this. The man slapped the fly on the table. "That's it. You won't have none. Your house would be burned down just like you. On the other hand, I give you money, and you are finally out. How much you wanted? 2 grand? I give you 2, so be it." "Bet you can't even imagine how much it is," laughed Igor. "Look at you, made it look as it should. I got to admit you scared me to death when told me about the fire. I see my mistake. Who am I to compete you?" said she with her head down. "Both this and the last times. You know, the only thing I didn't understand is how you managed to pull it off. No matter how much I thought, I could never guess. I just don't get it." "I have no doubt that you wouldn't understand a damn thing." Igor killed another shot and colored up red. "The simplicity is genius, neighbor. I slipped the poison in my mom's tea. At first I wanted to spike some to yours so that I could get you along with the inheritance. But you didn't manage to drink it, which actually came out great. While you were staying all shocked calling an ambulance, I planted the substance in your house and then told on you to the police officer. Everyone turned out to believe it was you who poisoned my mother." By the end of the conversation, he could barely put 2 words together. Therefore Anne said goodbye and left him. The man couldn't even guess that all that time she had the dictaphone in her bag on, which she bought in that very 2-floor supermarket. Instead of going home, the woman headed towards the police station. For the first time in many years, she felt so slap happy, but it was too early to celebrate the victory and was afraid to maleficate. The next day she got up early at dawn, made coffee and walked in the finished garden, turned on an old record with some unknown French performer. The woman was waiting. After a while she heard the police sound coming very fast from afar. She came to the front steps not to miss anything. At that moment the officers were dragging out an all swollen and yelling Igor. He was trying to break free and cursing a lot. At some moment their eyes crossed, and Igor turned purple with anger. "You," shouted he, "you nasty crone, that whole you. You framed me, I will find you." And didn't hear the rest. The beautiful morning of hers had just got even better.